Are you an older golfer and you simply just do not hit the golf ball as far as you once did, or you don't play as well as you once did? Well, I guarantee you're making one of these 3 mistakes, and the best part is they are super easy to fix. And that's the main topic we're going to talk about here today. What are the 3 things that you are probably doing that you learned early in your career that simply do not apply to you now that you're an older golfer? Now, if you haven't already, hey, do me a favor. Subscribe to our channel and tell somebody else about us here at US Golf TV, because we're putting out some great stuff. So be sure to subscribe and be sure to leave some comments or some questions in the comment section that I can answer for you to help you play better golf. So let's dive right into this. What are the common mistakes we're making as older golfers? Number 1 is we're going to talk about the setup. Okay, we're going to talk about distance specifically with the driver and the 3rd tip. But first of all, I want to talk about the setup. Hey, when we're young and we're flexible and we can move all kinds of places and do whatever we want, all right, how do we set up? Well, you get set in there, your toes are pretty square, you know, you got your head down, your shoulders. I mean, you're kind of in this locked position because you can twist and move and turn. But as we get older, we lose flexibility. So here's what you got to do. Number 1 is when you're set up, you've got to get your stance a little wider than you were probably before. Why? Because as we get older, our balance isn't as good as it used to be. If I have a super narrow stance, all right, and I don't have very good balance to begin with, and I start swinging this club, especially like a driver, 95, 96, 105 miles an hour, I'm going to start feeling like I'm going to fall over. So what are you going to do? You're going to slow your swing down. So tip number 1 in your setup is you've got to have a stance that's wider than you had when you were younger. Number 2, we're not nearly as flexible in the hips and the shoulders like we once were, so you've got to take your toes and you got to flare them out a little bit, all right? So before maybe we were square with our toes straight on. Now you're going to take and you're going to flare them. How much? I would say 25 to 30 degrees. I wouldn't be afraid to go a little bit more than that if you've noticed that you've had some real tightness in your hips and things like that. So when I'm set in here, my stance is a little wider and my toes are out. Now, when my toes are out and my stance is wider, I feel more confident because I don't feel like I'm going to fall out of balance. And number 2, now I can rotate my hips more, which is going to allow me to rotate my shoulders more, and it's going to allow me to make a longer swing. So those would be the couple tips that I would give you in your setup. Wider stance, toes out. All right, number 2 we want to talk about is how are we going to move this darn club? Now, when you're young and you watch these young guys and gals on TV, they can twist and move their body like we've talked about. So a lot of them are hitting golf shots with a lot of body movement, meaning a lot of rotation. And maybe, I mean, you could argue in theory that that's the best way to do it. But if you can't move your body like that, that's not an option for you. So what you got to do is you've got to start swinging your arms more. You've got to use your arms and your hands more in the golf swing as we get older. So what do I mean by that? Well, let me just exaggerate. Let me give you the 2 extremes. I'm going to give you a drill to help you feel your arms move more in the golf swing. So a body swing would be very little arms and hands and a ton of rotation, meaning the body rotates and really rotates, okay? The opposite of that would be no body movement and just swinging my arms. This is no body movement. Now, am I going to hit the golf ball as far doing this as I am if I really rotate my body and explode? Probably not. But I can tell you this, if you can't twist and turn your body, you better be using your arms. So here's a great drill for us to do that. Pretty simple. What we're going to do is we're going to put our feet close together. We talked about that a little bit already, right? That's going to force you to keep your body stable. All right? And then what you're going to do is you're just going to swing your arms. Boom. And you're going to hit some shots with just your arms. Notice I'm just swinging my arms back and through. My feet are together. This gets my arms going. Okay? Now, I could do this move also from a regular stance, okay? Just as a practice drill. I'm going to take my regular stance. Remember, you're going to get a little wider. Toes are flared out. And I'm just going to keep my body here and just swing my arms. Okay? Now that can get me the feeling of my arms moving. So suggestion number 2 is, yes, you've got to move your body. Pivoting is good. We've done some great videos on how to pivot properly in the golf swing. You should check those out if you want to understand more about that. But yes, you want to pivot and you want to move, but think more of arms and hands versus just body. All right, now let's talk about the 3rd one. The 3rd one has to do specifically with a driver. We've done a ton of videos on driving. And I will say this, if you want to maximize the distance with your driver, okay, you got to be hitting up on the golf ball and you've got to be drawing the golf ball a little bit. Those are the two things that we need to be able to do. So how are we going to do that? Well, a lot of it has to do with our setup. So let's go ahead and walk through that. So with the driver, there's a couple things that are important. Number one, as I said earlier, we want to be drawing the golf ball. Now, why do I want you to draw the golf ball versus fade it? Well, because when you draw the golf ball, in general, the ball has less spin on it, which means it's going to roll more, okay? Think of a shot that you hit that's really high, okay, and fades a lot. Those shots just don't roll very far, right? But if you hit a shot that has some draw to it, okay, when it lands, it rolls out. So one of the simplest and easiest ways to add more distance to your drive is to go from a fade to a draw. So how do we draw our driver? Well, here's what you're going to do. Number one is it starts with the setup. In the setup, we already know our stance is going to be a little wider. We know the toes are out. Those are going to help us out quite a bit. All right, but with the driver specifically, you're going to move the ball forward in the stance. So I like to see it off the inside of the lead heel or more even off the lead toe. That's where we want it to be, because when it's more forward, it's going to help us hit up on the golf ball. Number two is you definitely got to aim a little bit to the right if you're a right-handed golfer. So from the view line right there, down the line, if I'm trying to hit this ball straight down the net, I want you to get your toes and your body angled slightly to the right. Now this is going to help you swing the club from in to out and is going to promote the draw. If you want to know more about why that works, watch some of our other videos where we talk specifically about that. I don't have time to dive into all of that today, but just understand you got to be aimed a little bit to the right if you're a right-handed golfer. All right? The next tip I want to give you is make sure that your upper body is tilted slightly away from the target. So simple drill. Take your driver, put it down the middle of your body, tilt to the right. That's going to set your angles so that you're sitting here so you can hit slightly up on the golf ball. All right, now the last tip I want to give you in the setup, and then I'm going to give you one specific swing tip to tie all this together, and that has to do with the lead arm. The lead arm should be slightly higher than your trail arm. So down the line, lead arm high, trail arm a little bit low. All right, so when we're set up to the ball for the driver, if we want to promote a draw, because the draw is going to roll more than the fade, all right, ball's forward in the stance, toes are out and I'm wide, okay? Slight rightward aim, tilt away with the arm high, just like this. And if you do that, that's going to help you set up to draw the ball. Now, how about the swing? We already know the swing should be more arms than body as we get older. So here's a great drill you can do. We call it the TV drill. It's one of our favorite drills. This part right here is the butt end of the club. When you swing the club, I'm going to do it without a ball here. And when you finish your swing, I want the butt end of the club to be pointed out and to the right of the target line if you're a right-handed golfer. So from a reference point, I'm here, boom, the butt end of the club. Notice how it's pointed out over there. What that's going to do is two things. It's going to help you learn to swing the club from in to out, which is going to promote the draw. And number two is it's going to teach you to release the club face and get the club face back to square. If I do those two things, I'm going to start drawing the golf ball. So the truth of the matter is that as we get older, we can't do things we used to do. What you learn to do when you're 12, 13 years old and learn the game do not apply when you're 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. All right? Work with what we got. Get your stance wider. All right? Get your toes out when you're set in there. When you go to the golf course, think about swinging more with your arms versus your body. When you're hitting your driver, let's hit a draw versus a fade. Let's get aimed to the right, get the lead arm high, swing the club up and to the right and rotate it. And if we do that, we can start drawing those drives. Just because we're getting older doesn't mean we can't play great golf. We just simply have to adjust to the talents and the resources that we have available. If you do these three things, I guarantee you, you can still play some great golf.